So it's pretty simple. I sat down with Laura at a location here in Montreal, and we had easily one of my favorite conversations. And that's what I think is the fun of Not a Journalist. As much as I have done the smaller mini episodes where I discuss some of the things that I find interesting in media, and the conversations are going to be the focus, because all the other stuff in media is interesting to me, but the conversation is where we get to discuss with people who work in some sort of relation to all the different media we consume. So Laura, who was kind enough to ask me to be a part of C2 Montreal in 2019, was the first person I wanted to speak with because of the fact that I myself do not identify as a journalist. The whole idea of the title for this podcast came from the fact that I was invited to speak with Spike Lee, and I'm not a journalist, and there were other well-respected journalists who may have been in the running for that opportunity, and I will always appreciate the fact that I was given the opportunity to do what I did. I got to speak to a hero, a legend, an icon in the industry, and all because Laura believed in my ability to carry a conversation with someone as opposed to just talk to someone. And I definitely appreciate that. So I wanted to talk to her because I think her perspective and her ideas are unique and important and interesting, and that's where this came from. So please enjoy this Not a Journalist with Brian Holidae conversation.
Est-ce que vous avez des cidres?
Cameron.
Ah oui, je vais prendre un cidre s'il vous plaît.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
No.
We're just maybe young and hip.
Have a drink at the bar.
Talk about our life, our love, and our liberties.
Yeah, I took notes because that's who I am, and
You're
just so
hilarious.
because I was like, what could I talk about? What could I possibly talk about?
Well, if anything, the first thing I'd probably ask you is
this on?
yes, and I'd probably ask you who you are.
Okay. And I would tell you, my name is Laura Beeston, and I'm a writer, I'm an editor, and a multimedia content producer, and a former journalist.
Former journalist.
Merci.
Thank you very much. The funny part about this whole thing is, so the name of the podcast is Not a Journalist, and there's two reasons why I wanted to speak with you first.
Okay.
One, because I'm not a journalist, and you had me interview Spike Lee. And two, I always think of you as, like, when I think of journalists, you're one of the first people I think of.
Oh, that's so nice. Well,
So-
I'm definitely journalism adjacent.
Yeah, but it's just funny, because I was just like, when I was trying to think of, like, who's the first person I'd like to have on the podcast as an official, like, guest. But I mean, guest more like, who's the first person I want to talk to and you know, brag with, and
I'm
like,
honored.
and feature how awesome they are.
Thank you.
Because we've known each other since we were both at Concordia. I was working at the radio station. You were working at the newspaper. You were head editor.
Yeah, probably you knew me when I was editor-in-chief.
What was that like?
Editor-in-chief was definitely my first real management job,
Yeah.
I'd say. And it was interesting because I got to also sit on the board, so I got sort of a 360 of what it takes to create a publication, the background in terms of budgets and publication costs and HR stuff.
Were you studying journalism?
I was studying journalism. Yeah,
Okay.
I did a major in journalism and a minor in women's studies.
Oh, dope. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you started doing that, where did you see yourself going? Like, what was the dream that young Laura had when she was working at the Link and breaking stories and helping all the helping all the young innocent minds of Concordia learn about what's going on.
Innocent minds.
I like to pretend they're innocent.
Well, that's a good question. I think I had an English degree that I wanted to use.
Okay.
And I thought journalism was a logical way to write every single day and to have something to write about.
And be inspired, because there's always a story, right?
Yeah, I don't actually think I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I like that. It's just like...
It's the truth.
Yeah. You go in with these, like, ideas, because that's the same thing. When I started doing broadcasting, it was just like, oh, you know... I was doing a little bit of radio at John Abbott. What's this is gonna be the same thing. Broadcasting's gonna be easy.
And then a student newspaper is like a gateway drug.
Oh my
It's just
God.
like right in there.
Yeah, especially at Concordia. The politics at Concordia definitely did it prepare you for what real politics are like? 'Cause
Oh
I feel
yeah.
like
Oh yeah. Definitely.
I remember being at Concordia and seeing the politics play out and being like, I feel like the politics here are more intense than in the real world sometimes.
Yeah.
At least back then.
It was really good training for sure.
Yeah.
And I had the dubious privilege of being the editor-in-chief of a student newspaper, an Anglophone student newspaper at the height of the student strikes.
Yeah.
So I really think that liaising with police and politicians and all that stuff really prepared me for my first job.
That's pretty awesome.
At a newspaper where I had to phone up the police and politicians.
And you felt more comfortable doing it because you'd already done it.
Yeah, you get your reps in for sure. Yeah.
And you build a network.
And you build a network and a name for yourself. I don't think if I hadn't been at the link, I don't know that anyone would care.
Interesting.
Yeah, it gave me a lot of opportunities. Yeah, for sure.
I wish I had spun my CJLO career that well.
But you have.
I mean, I spun my CJLO career into doing fun stuff and networking really well, but like from what you're saying, the idea of like, oh, I'm going to study journalism. Oh, I'm going to work at the student newspaper. Oh, I actually have met politicians and police officers, and I've worked within the school and outside of the school, and I've liaison and networked with people. And then when you went off, because you worked at the Gazette, you already had those connections with people in the same city, which I don't think, how many student publications build that kind of connection that early?
But also I think that there's this idea that you're super well connected as a journalist, but you're actually just super good at finding who you need to talk to. And then I think actually my connections came probably from, just talking to whoever I needed to at the time. Because it was the same thing when I moved to Toronto to work for a newspaper. I had also no connections
that's fair. Okay.
in Toronto, but then I left with a lot more people sort of in my Rolodex than when I started. So
Plus you also, like you were saying, knew what you were doing.
I mean, I think that it's a really interesting job because you never actually know what your day is going to be like.
Yeah.
So you never know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But you just know that you're probably going to have to cold call some people. You're probably going to have to ask some important questions.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to submit something at 4 p.m. every day. So it's kind of,
daily
news.
Hot damn.
That's a grind,
That sounds stressful.
It is.
You were hustling.
Yeah.
We just watched Hustlers, so
Yeah,
I
it was
really wanted to
good.
segue
Yeah.
that in.
For sure. I mean, I didn't drug anybody. So. Sorry, I totally ruined the plot of that movie.
Oh,
but,
no.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, if you guys see that movie, if you can pay attention to anything other than J-Lo, I applaud you, because I definitely could not. Mind you, we had a guy in the theater with us who fell asleep and snored.
That was my favorite part of the movie. Is when someone snored.
And that's not even because the movie's not good. The movie's great. Him snoring was just that funny. And it was the cherry on the top.
He actually woke up because we were laughing at him.
It was so great. It was so great. Anyways, but so one of the first things that I always like to think of is what would I have told myself if I could talk to younger me when I was working at the radio station. But before I answer, what's the one thing that you wish you had heard, or if you could go back, would want to tell yourself, starting off at the link, or first day at the link and last day at the link?
Oh, first day at the link, I would have told myself to buckle up.
Okay, yeah.
just kind of get ready for this wild ride. I don't regret anything at the link. It was really a good time.
Yeah.
It was a really good time.
You did a great job.
Thank you. But I was on such an amazing team.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I'm really lucky that all the people that I was working with are still my great friends.
Yeah.
And we all like turn up for each other's weddings now. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty cute. I've seen the pictures. I like that you guys have a crew. That's what's cool about it.
So I think I would have told myself first day to just enjoy as much as possible and not worry so much about it because it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then last day,
Yeah.
before the real world,
Yeah, exactly.
I would have told myself to prepare for this with the mindset of a marathon runner, not a sprinter.
Okay, yeah. Very
I
important.
think my concept of time has changed dramatically because you move through the days and you lose track of time and then years go by and I think I would have maybe tried a better pace
Okay.
perhaps, but I feel really lucky about the way that it all worked out and is working out. Currently, I'm still, journalism adjacent.
I was gonna say from outside looking in, from seeing what you did at the link and then seeing you Gazette and then Star in Toronto and then coming back here and just always doing something, always writing something, always being connected, always being involved and always being honest and true with what you're writing.
I'm trying.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
Like I mean, you get to go back and look at it. Like that's it. How, does it feel like that from your perspective? Because that's one of the reasons I like the idea of doing this. I can tell that you're awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And sometimes I wonder if people realize they're awesome because you're doing all this stuff. You don't really get to see the trees from the forest, as they say.
Right. I mean, that's really kind. First of all, thank you very much for choosing me. And it's funny because I'm wondering, I'm in an interesting time right now because I am wondering about my career and I'm taking a little baby break from work to sort of sort out some issues. I'm pretty tired right now, but
like you said, sprint.
Yeah,
you were
exactly.
sprinting.
I was sprinting for a long time, so I'm taking a little break from work, and I'm kind of excited to have the pendulum swing the other way and get back to sort of why I was excited about my chosen profession in the first place and what I should be doing with the gift of communication and
storytelling.
And sort of where I should be focusing my energy. Because I think for a while I kind of was like, oh, I can do everything and anything, and I took on a lot of stuff, but I think figuring out why you're doing what you're doing and letting that lead you is sometimes nice. So I don't feel like super awesome right now, but I mean, so this is a perfect time to talk about this because I'm trying to reconnect with what made me excited about the work in the first place.
Yeah. What are some of the things that change your perspective on the work in the first place?
I mean, industry realities are pretty interesting at the moment in media.
Yeah.
I think
it big shift from when we were in school.
Oh yeah. But even then, I remember, throughout the course of my career, there's been so many layoffs that I've been adjacent to.
Yeah.
And organizations seem to cut from the bottom of the hierarchy, and that's usually where young journalists land. So it's, unfortunate. But I've learned a lot about management, and I've learned a lot about sort of having some false idols, maybe.
Okay.
And I don't think a lot of people have answers or solutions to kind of this disruption, and so it's kind of an interesting space to be in when you see how a bunch of different organizations and legacy organizations are managing very interesting times in
because I mean, in the time that we were in school until now, I think one of the big changes for me was watching print turn to digital. Some people like to say print is dead. I don't say it's dead. I say it's transition.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between it didn't die. Dying would mean that no one wants to read the news.
And more people are reading than ever.
Exactly.
I always say that print isn't dead; it's disorganized.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah. And also, I do think that when you are undertaking structural changes, it can be really hard.
Yeah.
Especially because with structural changes come cultural shifts.
Yeah.
And I think we might be in the middle of something like that.
Yeah. Disturbance, like you were saying earlier.
Disturbance.
In the forest. Sorry.
In the forest.
Geek moment.
And then
Sorry.
also, social media and Google and all of these, these structures have sort of played right into that as well. It's been a culmination.
So that's one thing that I would definitely love from you. I grew up, actually, not that I read newspapers, but I grew up with the idea that newspapers were where you got your news and you trusted news sources. And then everything started to shift from it was more important to have a well-written story to it was important to be the first to report on a story.
Right.
For you as a journalist, what was that like? What was seeing that like?
I think it's really interesting.
Or am I wrong?
I don't know how to answer the question. I think people do still trust news sources. I think
not that I was saying they should.
Yeah, no. I think that there's just a lot fewer resources. So there's a lot fewer writers. So there's a lot fewer, and there's a lot less time that I feel journalists can take. And there's this weird culture of hot takes now too, where everybody's just commenting and opining.
A lot of editorializing.
But there's a lot more. I think people still really value investigation.
Oh wait, you said opining?
Opining, opinionating.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Opining. Maybe that's wrong.
No. I remember when we left the theater, you said a word, and I was just like, I don't know what that means. So trust me, I'm sure your vocabulary contains a slew of words that Brian does not know.
Opine.
But opining. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I always found interesting. I remember the first time I read a news article that wasn't in the op-ed section that had a comment in it, and I remember thinking, I was told to never do this in school, because when I was doing radio broadcasts, I studied with a journalist, one of my professors at Abbott, Ernest Tucker, and he always told us, you're not supposed to put your opinion. You're supposed to really be separate from it and report as honestly as possible. So when I was reading, I don't remember what I was reading, but I just remember reading it and being like, oh, that's weird, because that sounds like an opinion. The way they structured it, you couldn't say for sure it was an opinion, but they kind of finessed it to seem like they were leaning towards something.
Right.
And I was just like...
You smelled the bias.
Yeah, yes. I definitely smelled the bias.
Yeah.
And that,
turns you off.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I think a journalist's number one job is ultimately to present information in a way that is... people say objectivity is kind of a passé thing, but I think you need to be fair.
Yeah.
And that does take a lot of time talking to everybody, and presenting the facts and letting people determine their opinions based on the facts.
Yeah.
And you have to be accurate as well. That's a huge one. Accuracy is very important to me, and accountability is very important to me. And I think those things are more relevant today than objectivity, because I don't think, everybody's coming at a story, and depending on your background and how you've been socialized and what your culture is, you're going to come out of the same facts with a different take, right? But I do think that there's a lot more space that's given up to hot takes now than to presenting all the information, investigating things thoroughly.
People like to disagree with people, too. So, once a hot take is given, people can either be like, oh, I totally agree with this, or you get the other side who gets to jump and attack, and they feel like they have input on it.
Yeah, well, that's everything's a panel now. It's very interesting. Yeah.
I miss the good old. No, I don't. It's like I said, it's just different days, not good old days or bad old days.
Totally, and I think that we're in a transformational time, and I think it makes sense that my career has transformed sort of along with these changes, because the way that journalists were working, even when I started J School in 2008, has changed so much. So, that was pre-Twitter, or just at the brink of Twitter,
Exactly. Thank you for segueing it back. That was
Yeah.
smooth.
No.
I was like, how do I bring it back to
Yeah.
her? But no, this is one of the reasons I was really excited is because I knew that in a conversation we would eventually explain at least journalism, and I feel that you have a take that you have a hot take
hot
that I
take.
definitely agree with.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot and reflecting a lot about journalism.
Yeah.
Now that I'm not working in a newsroom, it's really interesting to sort of have a bird's eye view and see what all the publications are doing.
Yeah.
And yeah,
What was the big difference between when you were working on like newspapers versus when you were working now on the magazine?
Right. A magazine gives you the luxury of a little bit more time
Yeah.
for analysis.
Not daily 4 p.m. deadlines.
Yeah, for analysis. And I mean, I'm really lucky because my job is still service oriented in that I should explain that I work at a creative business conference.
Yes.
And my job is basically to listen to everything that comes out of the programming of that conference and decide what is the most important information that we should pass along to creative business leaders. So I'm very lucky in that I get to hear some of the world's most amazing speakers talk and figure out what is the most awesome takeaway that I could pass on to someone who wasn't able to be at that event.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. A magazine is an interesting product. It comes out tomorrow, by the way, and you can go online at c2montreal.com to find it. Yeah, I'm kind of excited about it. You know, it's 96 pages. It's all the highlights of the C2 event, which you were at.
Yes.
You know, it's cool. It's good. And then you think about storytelling. You have a little bit more space in a magazine, a little bit more room to go in depth.
And you got to also do some of the interviews. Like,
Yeah.
you got to do some of the discussions and stuff.
Yeah.
Were you planning? Was that planned?
Some of it was
okay.
planned, yeah. I mean, I definitely had one interview that I was definitely the one to do it.
Okay, cool.
But then the rest were sort of on the fly. But since I was producing an area of C2 called the C2 Aquarium,
Yeah.
which is, where we get one-on-ones with our amazing speakers. And people were very generous in this space. But I was sort of, managing the agenda and stuff. And if anything changed, because it inevitably does, I would just hop in and try to pick up the interview because I had all the show notes.
Yeah.
So it made sense that I would just sub in. And I really do enjoy interviews. So it's
You're
kind of
great.
weird to be on the other side of the interview. Usually I'm the one asking questions, but c'est la vie.
I try to ask as few questions and try and have more of a discussion.
This is the beauty of podcasting too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for C2, first question, because I guess I do have to ask you this one. You were saying that you got to do one that was planned. Was that someone that you got to pick because you saw the list and you were like, this is someone I really genuinely want to speak with?
Yeah. I
was
definitely got first dibs on Dr. Martine Rothblatt.
Yeah.
She's an amazing CEO, pharmaceutical tycoon. She also helped invent satellite radio.
Oh, dope.
Yeah, she's an amazing transhumanist, entrepreneur who's just had so many careers in her lifetime, and believes in digital immortality and is just the most interesting human. So I was very lucky to talk with her. And it was cool because, on stage they talk about sort of innovations and her big projects, etc. But I got to talk about her leadership style and how she runs her many companies and sort of what type of, I don't want to say spiritual, but what type of personal, personal beliefs she brings to work every day. And it was very cool.
My one regret right now is that I didn't get to film your face because it lit up when you were talking about that.
Oh.
Genuinely did.
Yeah, well, she's amazing. Everyone should look her up. She's really something else. So I was very nervous for that interview. But then it was over and, time went on and I started working on the magazine. And then later on, we got an email from her people saying, oh, we'd really like to get a copy of that tape whenever it's ready.
Oh, dope.
Because they really liked the interviewer. So I was like, oh, okay, I still got it. I can still ask good questions. So yeah, that was fun. I love interviewing people. I love picking people's brains. So this is also another privilege of being a journalist is you really get that freedom to ask questions and to really have a conversation and try to go deeper. And it's a real privilege to talk to people like that.
Oh yeah, no, it's great.
And just everyday people too, you know, like you never know every day. Well, at least when I was working as a journalist, I never knew who I would talk to in a day.
Yeah.
I never knew what kind of story I would be running
You didn't
down.
know the path that it was going to follow.
Yeah.
It was organic.
Totally. And I totally remember when I was at the Montreal Gazette, I was living in the Mileland at the time, and I would bike down that hill on Park.
Oh God.
And sort of the city is spread out before you.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking to myself on my bike every day, like, okay, Montreal, what's it going to be today?
That's so cute.
You know, like,
I love it.
what do you got for me today, Montreal? And
I see you, Montreal.
yeah,
Speak to me.
sometimes it was, you know, just kind of calling the police every hour just to see what's up. And sometimes, you know, they send me to Lac-Mégantic, you know, a train exploded. So you got to run and cover. Or, you know, I'm trying to think of my other Gazette stories. It seems like a long time ago. I guess it was. But yeah, just you never know what's going to happen every day. And as someone who's always sort of curious, and I'm not crazy about routine, so it really suited my lifestyle.
I feel like C2, the event, leading up to the event is a bit of a routine, but then once the event comes, you get that wild sense again, right? Like, all right, C2, what story are we going to tell? What adventure?
Right.
How are we going to spread the word?
Right. It's really interesting. Yeah. It's pretty neat though, because at our company, you know we have an event for these 3 days, but the content of the event changes dramatically year to year.
Yeah.
So developing that and being part of that process to think about, okay, what are the most important business questions right now? Who can help us creatively answer them?
Yeah.
How do we get them in the door? And then once they're here, who should we get to interview them, and what should we ask about? Like that type of building is really still leaves a lot of room for I don't know, the mystery of the day-to-day of the 9 to 5. So I really do enjoy staying on top of industry trends, and it's kind of like there's a lot of us who joke at C2 that it's kind of like doing an MBA without having to do an MBA, because you learn a lot about the business world, you learn a lot about sort of what the conversations are, the big questions are, and then you try to...
What industry means.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, our mandate is to sort of figure out how creative approaches can be in service to business and society. So sort of seeing all the business questions and then trying to figure out a creative approach to solving them.
Yeah.
And so there is still this service aspect to it that I really enjoy, and I think that that's the parallel with journalism, you know? You're really trying to empower people with information and ideas about how they might approach different conflicts or challenges. And I think that really keeps me like motivated that I'm doing in the right work, you know, because I want to help. And
you're helping change the world.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I think I'm doing my part to try to ask the important questions.
This is where I was supposed to come in and put my hand on your shoulder and tell you are helping change the world.
Thank you.
Because you're not going to see it that way.
Right.
You're going to see it as I'm doing my part to help business and creative ideas influence people. But some of those speakers that you guys worked with are the same people that are going to help actually change the world.
Oh, yeah.
And you're helping give them a platform to discuss that.
For
and
sure.
you're trying to get that and successfully getting all that information out.
Yeah. And
so,
also to...
as much as you don't think so, you are helping change the world.
Thanks. Well, I just think, you know, information and hacks and, you know, leadership approaches and seeing different ways that people unpack problems is a tool that you can then take away and apply to your own life and business and work and whatever you're doing. You know, there's a lot of things, you know, it is an MBA, you know, I've learned a lot of business applications that I'm thinking about as I'm, you know, trying to figure out, okay, you know, in a writing career, like what can I apply to this, or in an event planning capacity, what could I learn from this? And so it's very interesting. I'm still very curious, and I'm super lucky that I get to really be in the business of big ideas, you know? Really, like with the magazine, the best ideas won. Yeah. So it was kind of, you know, we have like 3 days of content, and it was like, okay, what was the most interesting or creative or groundbreaking or innovative things that we heard? You know, because there's also a lot, in any community, you know, there's a lot of buzzwords and there's a lot of there's a lot of content and a lot of stuff just out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of content. So how did you, like, when you said it was 96 pages, I was already just like, well, how do you decide because 3 days with multiple guests, multiple conversations,
125 speakers or whatever. Yeah.
How do you cut that down to how long? First of all, how long did it take to go through everything?
Yeah.
How did you figure out, like, did you guys vote on what nuggets? Because that's another thing, right? Like, when you're there's so many different opinions, or do you get to entrust one person to do the job? Like, what's the process kind of like?
I mean, it's interesting because I have, during the 3 days of the conference, I have this team of reporters that is everywhere, covering all the stuff, our eyes and ears on the ground, and they do a lot of the writing for our initial digital offering. And then every day we have a daily editorial meeting, and usually when you've got a bunch of smart people around the table, the best ideas kind of come out because we go around and we're like, okay, what was your aha moment? What was the coolest thing you heard today, etc. So I have I'm super lucky. I got to handpick some of my favorite journalists to come work for us, and you included, we got to.
We're bragging about you, not me.
Yeah, but I mean, who else was gonna interview Spike Lee? Right?
Anyone with, still to this day, all my friends, one of the big things, the first question, and as much as first thing people always say is, you did a great job. Which, thank you to everyone. I hope that I didn't convey nervousness. And one of the things that I've said from the beginning, and I've said to everyone, I wasn't as nervous about talking or speaking with Spike Lee. I was genuinely excited to speak with him. I was more nervous of letting you down because I really wanted to make sure that I represented you well, because you were the one that suggested me. So
wow.
So I definitely appreciate that, first of all.
Yeah.
And secondly, I hope I did.
You killed it. I had no doubts. And that's so funny because recently, I think I've woken up to the fact that I've got pretty high standards on myself. And I feel like other people have recently communicated, that they feel a bit of pressure to meet my high standards, but
good thing.
But I don't know.
That's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Yeah, I do.
It is, but the other side of it is that perfectionism, and I'm really trying to be healthy about it.
Yeah.
But this only recently dawned on me, and it's funny because you say something like that, and I'm like, oh, I just realized how high my standards are for myself. So this is something because I gotta be human, and also I screw up all the time, and
for what you're doing and for how you are communicating it and for what you're trying to create, I think that level of, you call it perfection, I think that level of what's a better word for it? I don't think it's perfection. I think it's just asking for a certain quality, and we're allowed to ask for quality.
Yeah,
it's not just quantity, it's quality. You're asking for people to step up and to really present themselves and to really bring their A game. And
yeah, because our readers deserve quality content.
Exactly.
And I think that's what's going to make the difference no matter how journalism goes,
Right?
It's going to be...
And now for a quick message from the Franklin Armstrong Collective. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying this edition of Not a Journalist, and you'll continue to enjoy more episodes that we'll be putting out in the future. We also have quite a few other shows that you can be checking out on franklinarmstrong.com. We also have an event coming up on February 1st. It's a game night hosted by Running with Wolves, which is one of the podcasts here on franklinarmstrong.com. And we'd hope you come out to the event. It's going to be at February 1st at Local Legend, 3910 Boulevard Saint Laurent. It's going to be $10, and you can get your tickets at franklinarmstrong.com/events. All right, back to the rest of this episode.
What is the story that hooks you and informs you and delights you?
Yeah.
Did you learn anything? What are you going to talk about when you go home,
Yeah.
At night and say, oh, I just read this thing. And, at the Toronto Star, they called it the Hey Martha, because they were really looking for the stories that would make, a husband go home to his wife and say, hey, Martha, you won't believe what I just read.
That's so cute, because that's a legit thing.
Yeah.
Like, I've done that in my life. Like, I've gone home and been like, hey, did you see this article?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
So we're always looking for the Hey Martha moments.
Yeah. I like that you say that, because that's one of the things I also wanted to that I like telling people about is coaching trees.
Right.
And you know the idea of coaching tree. A coaching tree is the idea that like when someone has the best analogy I know of is like football.
Yeah.
So you have the head coach of a team, and then he has an assistant coach, and that assistant coach studies under him, works with him, has his own way, but also is influenced by his coach, and then moves on because the head coach of another team. But he carries with him the ideas that have been imbued by the last coach.
Right.
I think in television, one of the best versions is The Daily Show.
Right.
Jon Stewart's coaching tree has led to Colbert, Trevor Noah, John Oliver, Samantha Bee. Like, you
Right.
see that style, and he's not the first one, but that
His influence.
Yeah, his influence has spread through the coaching tree.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think your coaching tree is pretty awesome. Like,
I'm really entering also a part of my career where some, like I've started to become a mentor to other young student journalists.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm only 33, but this sort of feels like another level of that. And it really is teaching me as much as I'm teaching them.
yeah.
I really like being connected with people who are on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And it's such a pleasure. Yeah, so any opportunity I have to help or coach or pass on intel or info or observations, I try. It's cool.
It's been fun.
It's been very fun.
I can imagine. What's it
Yeah.
like when they come to you? How does that feel? That moment where they're just like, I need advice, and you're just like, oh, I've been on this. The other side of this.
I don't ever tell people what to do. I really believe in people
True, yeah.
sort of figuring out their own path, but I say, I'll give them anecdotes of something similar I've experienced, or maybe considerations they haven't thought about, or
Yeah.
it really depends. But I mean, I don't have very many mentees, but I've got a couple, and I really want to help them out, and especially
It's nerve-wracking sometimes, yeah.
But they're at the Link as well, so I feel
Oh,
like
cool.
it's my duty as a proud Link alumni to
Yeah.
give back to the place that gave me so much to begin with. So yeah, I feel good about it.
And you're on the board.
I'm on the board.
Yeah.
I'm a non-voting member of the board,
Okay.
but I'm a sort of media advisor type.
Oh, smart. Okay.
It's
that's
cool. It's very cool. So
I'm the community member on the CJLO board.
yeah, maybe that's what I am.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
that's what I am. But I'm the sort of outside,
Yeah.
real world person
Yeah.
coming in and being like, well, in the real world, this is how it is. Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds
So,
fun, though.
yeah. And a lot of times, too, student journalists, I wish someone had told me, have so much fun.
Yeah.
Push every envelope. You can get away with murder right now. And then you can do things you're not allowed to do in the mainstream media. Do it. We streaked across campus for an ad and
That's awesome.
a house ad, and what else did we do? We did a lot of crazy gonzo things,
But you had fun.
So much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun. But you don't realize it when you're in it.
Yeah.
How much you're getting away with until you go into the real world, and then you're like, oh shoot.
Let's streak for it. Oh, we can't.
We can't streak anymore.
Oh.
There's no streaking. No streaking allowed.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I thankfully have never streaked.
Yeah, I was at a Jays game not too long ago, and the conversation came up
Yeah.
because we were like, why are there police on the field? And the person I was with was like, oh, in case they're streaking. And I was like, that never even crossed my mind. Unless someone charges the field.
Hilarious.
I know.
Oh, wait, and so they were on the side? Like they're
They're just they're like during the breaks or whatever, between innings, there's police officers that are visible.
wow.
Just making sure no one streaks.
How often do people streak in this world?
I don't know.
I feel like I've really missed out on this whole idea of streaking. Like it always seemed like a frat thing in movies, but now that I talk to because you're not the first person to tell me recently about when I was in school I streaked. And
Oh,
was just,
I didn't streak.
Oh, you didn't streak. Okay.
But my assistant news editor struck? Stroke?
Struck?
Whatever. I don't know that word.
Brand new.
Streaked.
Yeah.
Streaked. In the wee hours of the morning on Loyola campus when no one was looking, except for our photographer.
Yeah.
To get the shot. Yeah, we had all these crazy house ads where it was like, you could do this crazy thing, or you could just come to our meeting and join the team. And streaking was one of the crazy things.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's a good ad. It'll haunt my assistant news editor forever.
Oh yeah, whose idea was it?
I don't know. It was just an ad campaign, but
one of those days where we're all
Yeah.
just hanging out.
It's like my first, foray into like content marketing,
Yeah.
marketing your brand as something. So streaking, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that brave. I see you have notes.
I did.
There's a few things that you said you wanted to talk
about. You were asking me to talk about some awesome things, but I've talked about them.
Yeah.
Talked about baby burnout, which is like the most recent news.
Yeah.
Talked about the magazine. Talked about the aquarium. So yeah.
Thank you again.
Oh my gosh.
That was a crazy experience.
Oh my God. I am so happy that you were the
with
one
Spike Lee is,
to. Yeah, and you can also watch that on the C2 Montreal Facebook page.
Yeah. I'm going to put all these links in the episode when I post it.
Cool. What else should I say? I mean,
what's one other thing you'd want to well, what's your social media so that people can know where they should check you out?
Oh, my social media.
If you're interested.
It's funny because I used to be obsessed with Twitter, and I'm not really on as much as I used to be just because I'm not news reporting all the time. I used to just sort of be on Twitter on the fly. But Twitter's a good place. It's at Laura Beeston.
Okay.
On Instagram, it's mostly my friends and family. But if people are interested...
Oh, you can keep that private if you want.
Yeah, okay.
Twitter's enough.
I think that's a good place.
They get into your world.
Yeah. I would also say C2 Montreal is where, you won't see my name, but maybe my
your
influence
yes.
and my aura is sort of around that event.
Page.
Yeah, I try to... It's interesting not having a byline on anything, but it's good too because, you're serving a bigger...
Bylines are... As a journalist, bylines are kind of important. I mean, Lois Lane makes me feel like bylines are important. As a geek, my first introduction to journalism was a young man who was Superman secretly, and his partner, Lois Lane, or a young boy who was a photographer but was also Spider-Man.
Right.
So my idea of bylines comes from superheroes.
Right.
And Lois Lane made bylines seem like the most important thing you could ever have.
And there's a lot, I still think, in some traditional mainstream media places, there is a pressure or there is a, this competition type of thing where you want to be on A1 and you want to have the most bylines, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny because one of the things I realized about myself in that environment is that I was sort of not interested in that. I was really more interested in the story more than where it landed in the paper. And I mean, you always want an A1, you want to be on the front page, it feels great.
Yeah.
But that's secondary to writing a good story and making sure that as many people as possible know the information that you're trying to convey or hear about a thing or become invested or give an emotion or
because you could still have a Hey Martha on page 7.
Totally, 100%. And I think it's really funny because there was a newspaper I was working at and they were really competitive and they wanted us to be competitive with each other, but me and my other sort of intern crew, we were really collaborative, and I think that was way more beneficial in the long run. We really helped each other out. One of them was a photographer, so if I needed a photo, he'd help me, etc. So I don't know. Maybe this is why I also, didn't stay in that environment. Is that there is a lot of competition for making sure byline is there, but I don't think the byline is as important as the story ever, and that's just personal. But
I once again, I feel like what you're saying is probably the most important thing people could take away. Oh no, because I feel like that the idea of always being, I'm not a competitive person.
Yeah.
Any of my friends who are listening to this will be like, Brian has no interest in being number one. I don't want to be the best at anything. I just like having good conversations, and I like other people who like having good conversations, and I like people experiencing those conversations. Mm-hmm. So when I have friends who are just like, I'll take another one, please. When I have friends who are just like, don't you want to be the number one podcaster in Montreal? No, I definitely do not want to be the number one podcaster in Montreal. I want to have the most fun podcasting in Montreal.
Yeah.
When I was working at CJLO, a lot of people were really excited about trying to be the #1 station in the city. And I think that would be great because, we've definitely worked really hard. Thank you. We definitely worked really hard, and I get the recognition that would come with being #1. But I also understand, I would also hope that they realize the message that I'm trying to convey to them is there are people in the community and in society who don't have a voice, and CJLO's style of radio was very niche.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who came through the door when I was a program director, I always told them, do this because you feel like you have something to say for that group, because someone else isn't saying it. And they'd always be nervous on their first day, like, I don't know what to say, and I always sit them down and be like, hey, you already took the first step in being the voice for a community that no one else stood up for or came through the door to represent.
Yeah.
So you've already done most of the work.
Yeah.
Now just go have the fun.
Yeah.
Because that's the fun part. Go talk to your friends about the music you love and they love, and there's tons of people out there who love who just aren't talking about it as much.
Right.
And that's it. So, what you're saying about A1's great, but collaborative efforts lead to lasting friendships. I think that's, at the end of the day, it's pretty important, dude.
Yeah, and also I do think that no matter what, journalism is a collaboration between journalist and public.
Yeah.
And, journalist and editor and journalist and other journalists. It really takes a village to cover a city or a country properly.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of diverse voices and a lot of different voices. And I think that, one of the things that's kind of sad about the way that the news media is now is that it's getting smaller and smaller when it needs to get bigger and more collaborative and inclusive, and but because of the financial realities, it's contracting when it needs to be expanding. And I wonder, something that's preoccupying me is about publishing models. What is, what's the magic formula? How do we fund this stuff, etc. And I don't think anyone's really figured it out yet. And so there is a lot of room, to explore that. And I'm learning a lot from the business community right now.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what I can learn from marketers and from entrepreneurs and from, sociologists and psychologists and whoever to sort of expand and try to come up with a model that could be beneficial to all, because I do think that it is a really important public service that people are informed and have the facts and can make decisions and can learn about people and communities and situations that they might not have access to.
And learn where to, find the resources, because there's a lot of information. The amount of friends I have who didn't know that there was an election coming.
Right.
And
what?
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of my friends didn't know.
News people are news is it's our drug of choice, So it's kind of hard. We expect other people to care as much about the news as we do, but that's not the truth. So it's how do you make people give a shit? What? Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
We can say shit, fuck. No, I'm joking. I already said it, but it's there.
But so I think that's the other thing, is that you want to reach as many people as possible with the good info.
Yeah.
Because that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
When it's election time,
And when you say good info, I'd like to remind people that that's good info is factual information,
right.
By the way.
Yeah.
Not just the fun info.
No.
Because that's part of the problem.
No, infotainment is the problem a little bit.
My God.
We're worried about clicks and the next viral sensation, but I think that we're learning, we're learning about the short-sightedness of virality.
Yeah.
And, I think our attention spans are such that, we really are working with a new audience.
Do you think we've shot our attention spans down the drain?
I mean, it's interesting. I'm trying to practice mindfulness right now, so I know how difficult it is to sit and meditate for 10 minutes. So, I mean, personally, I feel like my attention span is shot, and I need to...
I bet you I can beat yours, but sure. I watch TV shows at 1.5 speed.
Wow.
That's the attention span of a child at this point.
Yeah, fast forward.
But I will point out that my attention, when it's someone or something that I care about, is locked in. Like this conversation, I'm enjoying, so I I could give a fuck less about anything else around us, but this has been fun. So stuff like that makes it important.
But it is really interesting because, you know, you're probably watching your show on speed 1.5, plus you've got your phone.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another...
Oh, actually, I usually don't have my phone.
Oh,
That's
good.
That's the one thing
You're rare then.
Yeah.
Because they're saying the next gen is, like, on their phone while they're watching the movie, so...
I mean, it depends on the show. I'm the type of person that, like, will watch a TV show and play a video game, and sometimes might even have a podcast.
Okay, so you've got multiple channels going at the same time. That's the thing.
I'm a broken soul. But when it comes down to, like, things that I'll still always watch things at 1.5 because I just can't deal with full-length shows anymore.
Gotcha.
Because I've fried my brain that way. I honestly, generally rewired my brain that if I watch a show at regular speed and it's not the most interesting storytelling, I don't go to my phone, but I just realize I'm
distracted by other things,
but also I'm trying to figure out the next phases of the story instead of enjoying the moment.
Right. This is why I can't watch movies too, because the writing isn't good enough.
Yeah. Oh
frankly.
my god, we could do a whole other hour on that.
Yeah. It's just not.
It's not.
You do not have my, what is it called, the something of disbelief, where
suspension of disbelief.
Suspension of disbelief. Yeah. I don't. And it's funny. I have an ex-boyfriend, and he would hate watching movies with me because I would just, if something was totally obviously off, I would mention it, and then it was over. I couldn't take the rest of the movie seriously because I'm like, you lost me.
Exactly.
This is a movie with bad acting and bad writing.
Thank you. And, like, I don't understand. Like, some people get so mad at us, like, because I am similar to that, and I'll watch a TV show or a movie, and I'll be like, okay, this, and this is going to lead to this. They wrote this way, so this is going to have to intertwine this way. The end of the movie is going to be this character and this character hate each other. This character is possibly dead, and the police are going to catch him because this person snitched on them.
It's so formulaic, eh?
Yeah, man.
And this is why you need better writers.
Exactly.
More diversity.
Yeah.
Different points of entry for storytelling. And I think that we are also, you know, like the movie industry is also going through this crazy disruption as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I think hopefully, you know, the playing field gets even. But I hope it doesn't go the way of journalism, you know, where there's like less and less money for a smaller amount of people, and inevitably those people, I mean, I don't think it can it?
I don't think so.
With like the internet and indie filmmakers and...
No, I don't think it will. I think unfortunately what is happening though is the biggest conglomerates are just buying everything.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about them, like, putting their finger on the little guys who are moving around slowly and trying to build up, and just like holding them in place by buying them out.
Right.
I know that's a weird analogy, but it's more just the idea that, like, you know, when, for example, that story that came out recently where Bob Iger talked about how when Jobs was around, him and Jobs would talk about Disney and Apple merging.
Oh.
And that something like that scares me because it's behemoths merging. Like, I like Voltron, and I like when things form like Voltron, but I don't want conglomerates to form like Voltron, because that's a scary Voltron.
Yeah.
Like, that's a scary robot monster that is just touching, like, if Disney and Apple were in bed together, you're talking about, like, Disney, who owns already half the things in the world and has journalists and newspapers and you know, hopefully not influencing them, but probably trying to influence them any way they can that would affect their bottom line in a positive way. And then you have Apple, which is the creator of probably the most popular source of information people have, the smartphones, the iPhone in their hand. So if you have the guys who are now running the almost every form of media, and the thing that people consume the media with,
the outlet,
that scares me, that it's all in one hand.
Yeah.
Which thankfully didn't happen, but the idea scares me.
Yeah. And that was like a premonition from Apple brains, isn't it?
Yeah, like Iger was talking about it in an article recently. I think he just released his memoir.
Oh, wow.
I'm actually interested in reading it because, like, you know, I love all this behind-the-scenes television stuff.
Oh, for sure.
If you guys have listened to previous episodes of Not a Journalist, you've heard me talk about, like, Shane Gillis and Boyan Yang and Chloe Fineman from SNL. You've heard me talk about the Netflix deal with Seinfeld. You've heard me talk about Amazon and my prediction that Amazon might end up being out on top because Amazon's merging buying things with consuming things, with consuming, like, your content.
Yeah.
It's just
a
like
Wild West right now, but there's very few people up, you know, running the show. Yeah. And I guess it's maybe the same thing for media. Like, you know, news. media.
Yeah, well, that's what did a lot of did the newspapers start to merge? Like, what was the way that what was the path they saw the best option for survival when things were changing?
Well, I'm from Winnipeg, and I do know that Post media, is like it's a big conversation right now about taking all the Canadian dailies, and I mean, I'm not sure where they're at the moment, but it is sort of a scary thing where all these Canadian cities don't have local news.
Oh, really?
Because everything's coming out of a centralized sort of zone, and
they did that in radio. Virgin.
Right.
Virgin started buying out all of these stations.
Same thing.
And yeah.
And so I wonder if there is going to be sort of a pushback eventually from the audience and the public, and wanting hyper-local stuff and wanting...
I would hope so. I want more local content.
Yeah.
Because you start to lose your identity.
Sense of community.
Yeah.
And then, there's like school boards and, political arms of whatever that just aren't being covered. There's just no one in the room taking a record, which is...
That's why, like, when, we were talking about it on the way here, when I heard that BT Mornings Montreal was closed, I was generally, I know their audience possibly wasn't as large as Rogers would have liked, but I understand why their voice was important.
Yeah.
Because, you needed someone discussing the local events that we're doing for our community.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm living in Montreal, but they're talking to me from Pine Beach train station in the West Island about new initiatives that they're doing, that's important. I don't live in Pine Beach. I'm not in the West Island anymore. But I should be up on what's happening in my city on my island, and that's where I was getting it from. Are other outlets doing it? Possibly. I don't know. BT Mornings, MTL was what I was watching, so it kind of sucked. But then it really sucked.
Yeah, and then you get people like Blog Montreal who are taking up the space, and it's like paid advertising.
I'm gonna say this right now, and I feel no shame in saying it, and it's not liable when you know for a fact, and if anyone wants to try and contest it, by all means, but MTL Blog takes money for articles.
Yeah.
It's not hidden.
Not journalism.
Yeah.
Either.
And so all my friends out there who send me links to MTL Blog know that I have never clicked on them, and I have no interest in reading it because I don't want to read the perspective of someone who is paid to tell me what the X location wanted them to say.
It's marketing.
Yeah.
It's not
marketing put forward as journalism.
Yeah.
Which to you, what is that like?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because you see people in this space, and I don't know anybody who is working there or anything, so I can't.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they're very nice people individually, but
I'm not commenting on the people who work there. I'm sure that these people.
But is this the model?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I hope not.
No.
Right?
Please.
Like that's how I feel.
That's scary.
I know.
Is that a thought that you had though?
I'm a little worried that's the model.
Good
but
God.
It's like pay to play, right? So.
Oh my God! Sorry,
I know we
that was
went
a
there.
scary moment when you said that. I really hope that's not the model.
Well, but they're around even though the mirror shut down. Like it's right. So
I mean, radio used to be that model. You pay payola, but they got rid of. I mean, got rid of it. I'm doing air quotes, but they essentially changed it into, back scratching and. Oh, make sure you come to this show, and oh, let me buy you drinks, and oh yeah, I played that record on air, and oh, I this label now has part ownership in these radio stations, and now those songs are getting played more.
Yeah, and I do think that there is a place for, like, especially right now, everybody in marketing is talking about, having a purpose and authenticity and vulnerability, and that it's not enough to throw money at a problem anymore. It's not enough to just sponsor an event. You need to be in the community. So maybe marketing is also going through a disruption, and that they also have to authentically participate with content production or whatever. So I do wonder. I think a really good example of marketing done well is something like Red Bull Music Academy.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean?
I used to work with Red Bull. I used to host events for them.
Oh, cool.
And they genuinely, the mindset behind Red Bull is we are not selling the drink. The drink is the business card. We're selling a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the Music Academy is a part of that. It's
Right.
part of the lifestyle.
But it's also, it doesn't feel like they're an added layer of money on top of an event. They're really actually actively involved in the event. And I do wonder if that's kind of maybe, I don't know if that's the future of journalism, but maybe that's some kind of marketing, hybrid, cultural, But then...
But how do you keep it local, too?
Yeah, I don't know. But Montreal Blog, we love to hate them, but at the same time, they are still doing what they're doing.
I know.
And it's...
And a lot of people rely on them as, like, a genuine source of... Like, they'll be like, oh, hey, these events are going on, and they'll send me the links, and I'm like, why is this the only place reporting that these events are going on?
Right.
But is it that because... oh, my God. That's the sad part is now, because what we're realizing is, does that mean a lot of these businesses are realizing that because MTL Blog has visibility, one of the best ways for me to get people to come to my event is to have to pay them because they're the only model that's
It's like an advertisement, right? Maybe?
See, that's the thing. I would be okay with it if everyone if they would at least write advertisement in it.
Right.
If you were posting all these articles and everything, but it always said sometimes sometimes when you're reading the newspaper, there'll be like a piece in the newspaper, but it says clearly advertisement,
right?
Even though it's written as if it's part of the newspaper.
Totally. Yeah.
But it says it so like you have to, if you read it, it's an advertisement.
Yeah, at least they clearly identify.
Yeah.
And lots of legacy media is doing that exact thing.
Yeah.
Globe Content Studio is an excellent example of that.
Yeah.
And I respect the work they do. They really, they really work with partners to create the content that is relevant because I also think that partners, maybe do sometimes have something newsworthy to talk about. But it's clearly identified.
Dude, this might be the direction for the model.
Yeah, but...
Like, you said it as a joke, but...
No, but at the same time, too, though, I don't think there's going to be any sponsored content of, school board meetings.
True,
and, there's
true.
all of this really unsexy but very necessary stuff that needs to be covered. How do you do it? Who pays for it? How do you make people read it?
Yeah.
And I think that's still the...
That's the stuff that we have to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, the model needs to figure out how to tell those important local stories and be profitable.
I totally had a prof who, I forget who, but someone once in my career has told me that it's like getting people to eat their vegetables. If we could live on pizza, we would.
Yeah.
We love infotainment.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes you need to eat some vegetables. You need some good vitamins in you.
Can I
you need
put
some
some
healthy
cheese on it?
energy. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's like it's not sexy.
Yeah.
But it's necessary
Yeah.
to eat your vegetables. And I think a lot of it too has to do with media literacy and how willing the public is to diversify their news sources and to get out of their own, it's so easy to be in your own echo chamber, et cetera, et cetera.
Because unfortunately, we're slightly lazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And if you're not a voracious reader, it can be hard to train yourself to seek out a lot of different sources, seek out a lot of different avenues to get your information and form an opinion. Yeah.
I cheat a little bit. Sometimes what I do is I'll find a really, if I'm reading a really good article but I'm like, I don't want to read this, I'll copy and paste the text into a text to Word.
Yeah.
And I'll just have that read the whole
audio
article.
And it's really interesting because audio right now is the next big, with all this Alexa, Hello Google or Hey Google or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Hello Google. Gaff. Anyways. I'm a media expert. No. But, I do think that audio is this next big thing that people are really paying attention to. It's the shorthand.
Yeah, it is. Because, for me, one of the reasons I do that is I'll copy and paste that text, and then I'll speed up the speech.
Oh, nice.
So
you and your speed, huh?
I know. I fried my brain folks.
1.5 for everything.
Sometimes 1.77. The face you made, I know.
So funny.
It's a problem.
But no, and I think that podcasting is also, in the last 5 years, 3 years, something like that, it's blown up. I think that there is something that audiences love about the audio world that is just starting to really, and you think about all these changes in media, and radio is still good.
Yeah.
Like, it's still going strong.
Radio, word of mouth, and television are still the 3 top ways that people discover music.
Interesting.
Yep.
TV, that actually surprises me.
TV, it's because people will watch a TV show and hear a song in the show, and they'll wonder, like, oh, what song is that? And then they'll look it up.
Interesting.
Which is why YouTube has been laying claim to being the main source, because when people Google, like, song from Crying Willow scene, and then they'll be taken to YouTube because someone else has already tagged it, and then YouTube then says, oh, well, people are discovering the music because they're playing it here first. But no, it's because they heard it on the TV show first.
Interesting.
There was a whole study. It was
and
very...
YouTube has a lot of market share as well, you know? So,
well,
and they just got into a music streaming situation, didn't they? Yeah.
Owned by Google. Once again, the mergers of big companies.
Yeah, here we go.
Like, that's the thing. And like we were saying, that takes away from local stuff as much.
Yeah.
Like, I've had friends reach out to me recently and ask me, like, hey, what's the best way for me to get my music heard? And I'm like, unfortunately, probably putting it on a streaming app, like promoting heavily, but like I know you're not going to get paid.
Facebook ad dollars,
Yeah, you're not. Yeah. You put it on Spotify, or submit it to like any streaming, or in Europe, Deezer, which is really big over there, and then you take out ads for it and essentially give people the link directly to your song.
Yeah, it's wild,
Or like some people are doing, and this is the other thing about clicks. Some people are literally buying rotations.
Right.
Like, they have farms that are just like people playing the song on multiple computers multiple times.
Wow.
It's really sad.
Oh, man. The world is not what it was when you and I were both in university.
It really isn't.
No.
Like, when I graduated in 2007, and that was like, I just finished communication, I started working at the radio station, and all I worried about was, like, promoting was like, well, how do I get these kids to post on Facebook to tell their friends? And now it's just like, how do you get them to take a TikTok video that gets 1.3 million views so that, some kid somewhere else in the world, like, does a buddy video with it, and then that gets viral, and then their radio show blows up. That's what it feels like.
It's a whole new game, eh?
Everything, that's one of the reasons I think it really does feel like everyone is being told you have to be viral.
Right.
But I think one of the most important things out of our conversation was, remember that authenticity is important.
Yeah.
Remember that honesty is important.
Yeah.
And remember that collaborations can lead to amazing things.
Totally. Yeah. And it is really interesting because how there's this like slow food movement and like the slow like textile movement about buying local and whatever. I wonder if that's going to happen to journalism.
Ooh,
that would be nice,
I hope so.
Slow journalism where you get your breaking news from the internet and then later you get context and analysis and a beautiful, tactile, maybe long-form magazine experience. I really do wonder, if it's going to go to that. That could be put to audio, et cetera, beautiful art,
Yeah.
I think, I wonder, I hope, because I think maybe the pendulum will swing the other way and people will realize how addicted they are to their smartphones and want to do a digital detox or like to sit down with a magazine. Like, I'm still a very huge magazine, consumer, and it is a different experience of content. So who knows?
Sitting back,
it's getting so weird.
Smooth music.
Yeah,
and
there isn't. Yeah, and there's no like ad popping up in your face while you're reading a magazine. It's just you and the dead tree right in your hands.
Oh man.
Cool.
Okay, again, your Twitter handle?
Yeah, is at Laura Beeston.
And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
This was so much fun.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Yeah, we are sitting in a bar in Montreal having this awesome conversation. And thank you so much for tuning in, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye, guys.
And thank you very much for tuning into that wonderful episode of Not a Journalist with Brian Holidae Conversation. I think that was, as I said at the beginning, one of my favorite conversations. I had a great time talking with Laura, and I also had an amazing time talking with the next guest, who is Sam I Am Montola. That episode is coming out very soon. It was a great conversation that I had with her, so make sure you guys tune into that one as well. We'd also like to ask if you have any comments, you can also leave a message. So if you go to franklinarmstrong.com and click on Not a Journalist, you'll see there's a link to leave a message. And if you guys enjoyed anything or had any comments or have any questions that came from this last episode, you can leave a message and we'll add those to the next episode. Don't forget, we also have on February 1st our game night that's taking place at Local Legend at 3910 Boulevard Saint Laurent. Tickets are available at franklinarmstrong.com/events. This has been a Franklin Armstrong Collective production. I'm Brian Holidae. Thank you very much for tuning in.